Jane knocked on my door holding a casserole dish like it was no big deal, but I could tell from her face that it had taken her a minute to decide to do it. I was standing barefoot in my kitchen, wearing the same gray t-shirt I had worn the day before, with my laptop open on the counter and a half-finished line of code blinking at me like it was disappointed. Saturday afternoon in my house usually had one sound: the air conditioner kicking on and off. Then came the knock. When I opened the door, Jane was there with auburn hair tucked behind one ear, a white dish towel wrapped around the handles of the pan, and that careful little smile she gave people before deciding how much of herself to show. "Hey," she said. "I made too much chicken and rice." I looked at the dish, then at her. "You made too much for one person, or you made too much as a socially acceptable reason to knock on your neighbor's door?" Her smile got a little wider. "Those can both be true." That was Jane, direct enough to make me blink, dry enough to pretend she had not just admitted something. I had lived next to her for 3 months by then. Quiet older neighborhood, narrow driveways, big trees, houses with porches that looked like they expected people to sit on them. I moved in because it was affordable, calm, and nobody bothered me. At least that was what I told myself. The truth was, I had built my life around not being bothered. I was 31, a freelance coder, which meant I spent most days fixing problems for people whose faces I never saw. I paid my bills. I answered emails. I kept the yard decent enough so the retired guy across the street would not stare at it for too long. From the outside, I probably looked stable. Inside, I mostly felt like a paused video. I used to write short stories. Nothing famous, nothing huge. Just little pieces about people I noticed, moments I could not stop thinking about. Then one year became another. Work got heavier, confidence got thinner, and I slowly convinced myself I had nothing worth saying. So I stopped. Jane did not know any of that when she stood at my door. At least I did not think she did. I stepped aside. "Come in." She glanced past me into the house, then down at the dish. "I don't want to interrupt your whatever that is." "Professional suffering," I said. "Coding." "Exactly." She laughed, and I noticed something about it right away. She laughed like she still had to check whether she was allowed to. Instead of sitting at the kitchen table, which felt too formal, we ended up on my front porch. I brought 2 plates, 2 forks, and 2 glasses of iced tea. She sat in the old wicker chair the previous owner had left behind. I sat on the top step. The chicken and rice was good, better than anything I had eaten all week. "This is unfair," I said after a few bites. "What is?" "You live next door, cook like this, and waited 3 months to mention it. I didn't know you were worthy yet." "That's reasonable." She leaned back, one ankle crossed over the other. She wore work pants with dried dirt near the knee and a faded green shirt with the sleeves rolled. Her hands looked strong, with small scratches around the knuckles. "You were working today?" I asked. "Client in Maple Ridge. Big backyard, no shade, too many planters, and a woman who kept saying she wanted something natural while showing me pictures of gardens that looked like they had a staff of 12. "You're a landscape designer, right?" "Right. I make yards look peaceful for people who send me 23 texts about where a lavender bush should go." She looked at me. "And you fix broken websites?" "Broken websites, broken apps, broken checkout pages. Sometimes broken databases. Mostly I clean up messes made by people who vanished before anyone could ask questions. So we both manage other people's messes for a living." "Pretty much." She lifted her glass. "To mess management." I tapped my glass against hers. The neighborhood stayed quiet around us. A dog barked 2 houses down. Somebody's sprinkler clicked back and forth. The afternoon light moved slowly across the porch boards. We talked longer than I expected. Not in some deep, dramatic way. Just easily. She asked about working from home, and I told her it was nice until it started feeling like I lived at work. I asked about her clients, and she told me rich people had very strong opinions about rocks. "Not stones," she said. "Rocks. They always call them stones when they want to be fancy." "I'll remember that." "You should. It might save you someday." She had this warmth that came through in flashes. A quick grin. A raised eyebrow. A joke tossed out like she did not care if it landed. But under it, she was guarded. Not cold. Just careful. Like every word had to pass through a little gate first. At one point she looked through my front window and saw the stack of notebooks on the small table by the wall. "You write?" she asked. I almost said no. It came up fast, automatic. "Used to," I said instead. "What happened?" I shrugged. "I got busy. Then I got out of practice." Then I got weird about it. Weird how, like every sentence had to justify its own existence. She looked at me for a second, more serious now. That sounds exhausting. It was. So I quit before it could keep disappointing me. Jane did not rush to comfort me. She just nodded, like she understood that kind of quitting. Maybe you didn't quit, she said. Maybe you just put it down too long. I looked at her. She looked away first and took another drink of tea. The sky was starting to turn orange when she shifted in the chair and winced. It was small, but I saw it. You okay? Yeah, just my shoulder. I was hauling these ridiculous concrete planters this morning because the delivery guy left them in the wrong spot and my client was hovering like a nervous bird. You should ice it. I know. Will you? Probably not. At least honest. She pressed her fingers between her shoulder and neck and rolled her head a little. There's a knot right here that feels like it's been paying rent. I hesitated before I said anything. I did not want to be that guy. The neighbor who took one friendly afternoon and made it strange. But she looked genuinely uncomfortable. I can try to work it out, I said. Only if you want. I'm not pretending to be a professional or anything. Her eyes came to mine, and for a second the porch got quiet in a different way. I know, she said. That answer had more trust in it than I expected. We went inside because the porch chair was awkward for it. She sat at the kitchen chair, turned slightly sideways, and I stood behind her. Before I touched her, I said, "Tell me if anything feels wrong." I will. I kept it simple. Shoulder, upper back, the tight place near her neck. Nothing more than that. I moved slowly, careful with the pressure. At first she sat stiff, hands folded in her lap, like she was ready to apologize for needing anything at all. Then, little by little, her shoulders lowered. That okay? I asked. She nodded. Yeah, that's actually really good. You sound surprised. I am. Fair. She gave a quiet laugh, but it faded fast. Her head tipped forward, auburn hair falling near her cheek. I could feel the knot under my thumb, hard and stubborn, and I worked around it instead of forcing it. For a few minutes, neither of us said much. The kitchen light hummed softly overhead. My laptop had gone dark on the counter. The casserole dish sat by the sink, half empty, like proof that the day had turned into something neither of us had planned. Then Jane said, almost too quietly, "You make me feel more beautiful than Trevor ever did." My hands stopped. Not fast. Not like I was shocked in some loud way. They just stopped because the room had changed. She seemed to realize what she had said at the same time I did. Her back straightened a little, and her fingers tightened around each other. "Sorry," she said. "That was a lot." I took my hands away and stepped back, giving her space. "It's okay." She turned in the chair and looked up at me. Her face was calm, but her eyes were not. There was embarrassment there, and something softer underneath it. Something tired. "I didn't mean to dump that on you." "You didn't." "I kind of did." "Maybe," I said, "but I'm still standing here." That got the smallest smile from her, but it did not last. I pulled out the chair across from her and sat down. I did not reach for her. I did not try to turn it into a line. I just waited, because for once in my life, I understood that the next thing said mattered more than anything clever I could come up with. Jane looked toward the dark kitchen window, where our reflections sat across from each other like two people trying to decide what came next. "He was my ex," she said. "Trevor." I nodded once. And I don't usually say things like that, especially not to men I barely know. "I figured." She breathed out, almost laughing at herself. "You barely know me, and somehow that makes it worse and easier at the same time. I know you bring chicken and rice to emotionally suspicious neighbors. That's not nothing." "No," I said. "It's not." She looked at me again, and something in her guarded face shifted. Not gone, just lowered a little. And I knew, sitting there across from her in my too quiet kitchen, that the knock on my door had not been about extra food. Not really. I did not say anything right away after Jane said Trevor's name. That was probably the best thing I could have done, because I could tell she was waiting for me to react wrong. Make a joke. Ask too much. Act jealous of a man I had never met. Turn her one loose sentence into something she had to defend. Instead, I just sat there across from her at my kitchen table and let the silence be normal. Jane rubbed her thumb along the edge of her glass. He had this way of making everything feel like a deal. A deal? Yeah. She looked down, then gave a small, dry laugh with no humor in it. Like if he was kind, I was supposed to notice. If he helped me, I was supposed to be grateful in exactly the right way. If he touched my shoulder, or brought me coffee, or said something nice, there was always this feeling that I had accepted alone. I leaned back a little, giving her more room without making a show of it. She kept going, quieter now. And later, if I disagreed with him or wanted something different, he would bring it back up. Not loudly. That was the worst part. He didn't have to yell. He would just say, "After everything I do for you." And then suddenly, I was the selfish one. I had no smart answer for that. The whole thing made me mad in a slow, tight way, but I knew my anger was not useful to her if I put it in the middle of the room. So I said, "That sounds exhausting." It was. She looked at me then, and stupidly hard to explain, because from the outside it just looked like normal marriage stuff. He bought flowers. He fixed things. He remembered appointments. People thought he was thoughtful. But there was always a bill. Her eyes stayed on mine. "Exactly," she said. "There was always a bill." The kitchen felt different from how it had an hour earlier. Before, it had been plates and iced tea and jokes about rich people arguing over rocks. Now it was Jane sitting across from me, still in her work shirt, looking like she had opened a door in herself and was not sure whether to close it fast. I nodded toward the chair where she had been sitting for the massage. "That's why this felt strange." She glanced over her shoulder, then back at me. "It felt strange because it didn't feel strange," she said. "You asked first. You stopped when I got quiet. You didn't act like helping me meant I owed you a mood, or a smile, or—" She shook her head. "I don't know. I'm making it sound bigger than it was." "You're not. It was just a shoulder rub. It was help." She swallowed. I said, "Help should be free." That landed harder than I expected. Her face changed. Not dramatically. Her mouth pressed together, and her eyes blinked once, like she had to hold something back before it embarrassed her. "Yeah," she said. "It should." I wanted to say more. I wanted to tell her Trevor sounded like the kind of man who treated love like a contract and then called himself generous for not reading the fine print out loud. But that felt like me trying to perform understanding, and I did not want to do that. So I stayed quiet. Jane stood a few minutes later. She reached for the casserole dish, but I got up first. "I'll wash it and bring it back tomorrow." "You don't have to." "I know." She gave me that careful smile again, only now it was weaker. More real, maybe. At the door, she paused with one hand on the frame. The porch light had come on, and little insects tapped against the glass. "I didn't knock because of the chicken," she said. "I know." Her eyebrows lifted. "You knew?" "I had a suspicion." "What gave me away?" "You brought enough food for 4 people and no explanation for why." "That is fair." We both smiled, and it eased the air between us, but only a little. Something had shifted too much to pretend the night could go back to being casual. She stepped onto the porch. "Good night, Andy." "Good night, Jane." After she crossed the yard, I stood in the doorway longer than I needed to. Her porch light clicked on next door. I watched her shadow move behind the curtain, then disappear. I tried to work after that. That was a mistake. The code on my laptop looked like it had been written in another language by somebody who hated me personally. I read the same lines 6 times and understood none of it. My mind kept going back to Jane sitting at my table, saying kindness had always come with a bill. I had met men like Trevor before. Not exactly him, but close enough. Men who never looked rough from a distance. Men who smiled at neighbors, held doors, remembered names, and quietly made the person closest to them feel like a burden. It was the kind of damage nobody noticed unless they lived near the center of it. And Jane had lived there for 6 years. I closed the laptop. For a while, I just stood in the kitchen and looked at the chair where she had sat. Then I noticed the casserole dish in the sink and washed it carefully, like that could make me useful without making anything heavier. The next morning, I woke earlier than usual. Sunday light came through the blinds in pale strips. I made coffee, forgot I had made coffee, then made another cup because the first one had gone cold. Around 9, another knock came. This time I was already halfway to the door before I let myself think about it. Jane stood there holding a cardboard tray with 2 coffees from the little place on Hawthorne. Her hair was down, still a little damp, and she wore jeans and a blue sweater that made her look softer than she had yesterday, but not less guarded. "I brought coffee," she said. "I see that. Not because I made too much. That would be concerning." She smiled. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside. We sat at the kitchen table this time. No porch, no pretending it was just neighborly. She slid one coffee toward me and kept both hands wrapped around hers. "I thought about not coming," she said. "I thought you might not." That would have been easier. Probably. She looked at me over the lid of her cup. I don't want easier if it means acting like last night didn't happen. That sentence woke me up more than the coffee did. Okay, I said. She nodded once, like she had made a decision before knocking and was now forcing herself to keep it. I was married to Trevor for 6 years. Divorced almost a year. And I'm not telling you this so you'll feel sorry for me. I don't. Good. She took a breath. Because I hate that. I hate when people look at me like I'm some sad story they're being polite about. I'm not doing that. I know, she said. That's why I'm here. Outside, a car rolled slowly down the street. The neighborhood was waking up in its quiet way. A garage door opened somewhere. A bird kept making the same sharp call from the maple tree near my driveway. Jane stared at her coffee. He didn't ruin my life all at once. That would be easier to explain. He just made everything smaller. My opinions. My clothes. My friends. My work. The way I laughed. The way I talked when I got excited. She rubbed at a spot on the table with her thumb. I used to paint, she said. I looked at her. Really? Yeah. Mostly garden scenes, old houses, women sitting alone in restaurants. Nothing famous. But I sold a few pieces before I got married. One at this little art fair downtown. I was 26, and I thought I had fooled the whole world into thinking I was a real artist. The corner of her mouth lifted. What happened? Trevor happened slowly. She said it plainly. At first he said he loved that I painted. Then he started asking how much money it made. Then he said the supplies were expensive. Then he said the spare room should be a proper office. Then he said painting made me moody. Then he said I used it to avoid real responsibilities. I felt my jaw tighten. She noticed. Don't do that. Do what? Look like you want to go fix the past. I let out a breath and looked down. Sorry. It's okay. Just don't. I'm not bringing you a problem to solve. I know. Do you? I met her eyes. She was not challenging me to be mean. She was asking because it mattered. I'm trying to, I said. That answer seemed to work better than pretending I already understood everything. She leaned back. I started painting again last month. You did? Small stuff. Bad stuff, mostly. Bad is allowed. Is that your official creative advice? As a man who quit writing because he got scared, yes. Very reliable source. She laughed. This time it came out easier. Then the laugh faded, and she looked at me in a way that made my chest tighten before she even spoke. Do you actually want this? She asked. I did not pretend not to know what she meant. Yes. Her eyes searched my face. Not the idea of it. Not the porch version. Not the version where I'm interesting because I come with a little damage and a decent casserole. Jane. I'm serious. I know. I put my coffee down. Yes. I want whatever is happening here. I don't know exactly what it is yet, but I want to find out. She looked scared for half a second, then annoyed that she looked scared. Okay, she said. Okay. If we try this, I can't do shadows. I can't do sneaking around, unclear games, pretending in public and then acting different when nobody sees. I spent too long living in rooms where the truth changed depending on who was watching. I don't want that either. My brother Jamie is coming today. That hit like a sudden turn in the road. Today. This afternoon. He visits every few weeks. He is loud, loyal, and convinced every man within 20 feet of me should fill out an application and provide references. I'm guessing Trevor did not help with that. No, she said. Trevor gave Jamie a hobby. Despite myself, I smiled. Jane did too, but her eyes stayed serious. Jamie is protective, sometimes too much, but he saw things other people didn't. He saw me stop painting. He saw me stop arguing. He saw me become very good at saying I was fine. I can handle your brother not liking me. He may like you eventually. That sounds optimistic. It is. I'm trying it out. We sat there a while, the coffee cooling between us. Then Jane reached across the table. She did not grab my hand. She just placed her fingers near mine, close enough that the choice was clear. I moved my hand the rest of the way. Her fingers were warm, a little tense at first. Then they settled. We let it breathe, she said. But we don't lie about it. Agreed. And if either of us gets weird, we say so. I can do weird. I've noticed. I laughed, and she smiled for real then. Not huge, not careless, but real. When she left, she took the clean casserole dish with her and stood on my porch for a second before stepping down. Andy, yeah. I'm glad you opened the door. I wanted to say something smooth, something memorable, but the truth was all I had. Me too. She nodded, then crossed back through the yard toward her house. And that was when I saw a blue pickup turn onto the street and slow in front of Jane's driveway. A man climbed out, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a dark jacket and the expression of somebody who had already decided the world was full of problems he might have to handle himself. Jane turned, saw him, and lifted a hand. Jamie had arrived, and from the way his eyes moved from his sister to me, then back again, I could tell he had noticed enough in 5 seconds to make the rest of the day complicated. Jamie did not wave at me. He gave Jane a quick hug in her driveway, but his eyes stayed over her shoulder, locked on my porch like I was a loose board he had already decided to inspect. I lifted one hand, because pretending I had not seen him would have been worse. Jamie gave me the smallest nod possible. Not rude exactly. More like a receipt. Jane looked between us and sighed, so lightly I almost missed it. Then she said something to him, and they went inside her house. Her front door closed, and the street went quiet again. I stood there with my coffee in my hand, feeling like I had just been introduced to a security system. For the rest of that afternoon, I tried to keep busy. I answered emails. I cleaned the kitchen. I stared at a client's broken login page and fixed the same bug twice because I kept forgetting to save it. Every so often, I heard Jamie's laugh through Jane's open window. Big laugh. Full chest. The kind of laugh that took up space without asking. Around 6, Jane texted me. Jamie is being Jamie. I'm sorry in advance. I wrote back. That feels like a weather warning. A minute later. It is. I smiled at my phone longer than I should have. The next morning, Jamie knocked on my door. Not Jane. Jamie. I opened it and found him standing there in a dark hoodie, arms at his sides, face calm in a way that did not feel calm at all. Up close, he looked older than Jane by maybe 4 or 5 years. Same eyes, same strong jaw, but where Jane had warmth behind her caution, Jamie had caution stacked on top of caution. Andy, he said. Yeah. Jamie. I figured. He glanced past me into the house, not nosy, just aware. You got a minute? I could have made an excuse. I did not. Sure. We sat on the porch because inviting him into the kitchen felt too personal, and standing in the doorway felt like a confrontation. He took the chair. I sat on the step, same place I had sat with Jane 2 days earlier. That felt strange, but I did not move. Jamie rested his elbows on his knees. I'm not going to dance around it. I didn't think you would. What's going on with my sister? I looked out at the street for a second. Mrs. Kennard across the road was watering flowers in a robe and pretending not to look over. Something, I said. I don't know the exact name for it yet. Jamie's mouth tightened. That's supposed to be charming? No, it's supposed to be true. He studied me. I kept going. We've talked. More than before. Something shifted. Neither of us planned it, but I'm not going to act like nothing's there. And what do you want from her? That question had weight in it. Not curiosity. Warning. I want to be honest with her, I said, and see where it goes without making her feel pushed. Jamie leaned back. That's a clean answer. It's the only one I have. He looked toward Jane's house. Her curtains were open, but I could not see her. You know about Trevor? Some. Not enough. I did not answer, because he was right. Jamie rubbed both hands over his face, then dropped them. I'm not here to tell you my sister is helpless. She's not. She's tougher than most people I know. But Trevor got into her head in ways that were hard to watch. His voice stayed steady, but I heard the anger under it. He didn't come in swinging doors off hinges, Jamie said. That would have been obvious. He was polite. Always reasonable. That was his whole thing. He made her feel unreasonable for wanting anything he didn't already approve. I listened. She used to argue with everybody, Jamie said, and for the first time his face softened a little. Not in a bad way. She just had opinions. Big ones. About paint colors, city parks, terrible restaurant patios, whatever. She had this whole messy confidence. Then after a couple years with him, she started asking permission without using the word permission. That hit me harder than I expected. He talked her out of painting, Jamie said. Talked her out of half her friends. Talked her out of wearing things he said made her look like she was trying too hard. And he did it all like he was helping her become more mature. Jamie looked back at me. She is just now coming back to herself. I mean just now. So when I see some guy next door looking at her like she's the first warm day of the year, yeah, I have questions. I almost smiled at that, but his face told me not to. I'm not trying to rescue her, I said. Good. Men who want to rescue women usually want applause. I don't want applause. What do you want? I thought about Jane holding coffee at my kitchen table. Jane saying help should be free. Jane placing her hand near mine and letting me choose the rest. I want her to not feel smaller around me. I said, that's it. I want to be someone she can tell the truth to without paying for it later. Jamie's expression did not change right away. And if she changes her mind, he asked. Then she changes her mind. If she gets scared, then she gets scared. If she pulls back, I let her. He stared at me for a long second. You say that now. I know. That's not an answer. No, I said. It's not. But I don't have proof to hand you. I can only tell you I'm not interested in owning her, managing her, or winning points by being different from Trevor. I'm just trying not to be careless. The porch went quiet. Across the street, Mrs. Kennard finally gave up pretending and carried her watering can inside. Jamie stood. I don't bless things. I didn't ask you to. That almost got a smile from him. Almost. He pointed once toward Jane's house. She matters. I know. No, you don't. But you might. Then he stepped off the porch and crossed the yard without saying goodbye. I sat there after he left, feeling like I had been measured and not fully rejected. Later that afternoon, Jane came over. She did not knock the same way this time. It was softer, just 2 taps, like she already knew I would open. She stood there in a cream sweater, hair pulled back, eyes searching mine. Jamie came here. He did. What did he say? I stepped aside. You want the nice version or the true version? The true one. We sat on the porch again. I told her enough. Not every word, because some of it felt like Jamie's to own, but I told her he was worried, that he talked about Trevor, that he warned me not to make her smaller. Jane looked down at her hands. That sounds like him. He loves you. He does. Aggressively. Little bit. She smiled, then it faded. Did it scare you off? No. You sure? I'm still here. She nodded, but she did not look convinced. A breeze moved through the maple tree, scattering little dry leaves across the steps. Good things make me nervous, she said. I waited. That sounds ridiculous. It doesn't. It does to normal people. I work alone in a house and talk to broken code. Don't put me in charge of normal. That got a real laugh out of her, quick and surprised. Then she pressed her lips together like she wanted to keep it from turning into something softer. When something feels good, she said, part of me starts looking for the cost. Like I missed the line where I agreed to something. I hated that for her, but I kept my voice even. You don't owe me anything for feeling good here. Her eyes moved to mine. I know you mean that, she said. That's what scares me. We sat with that for a minute. Then she pulled her phone from her pocket and held it in both hands. There's something else. My stomach tightened, but I nodded. Trevor called last week, she said. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail. I kept still. I listened to it. Her fingers tightened around the phone. More than once. Okay. Her eyes snapped up, like she had expected a different response. That's it. What do you want me to say? I don't know. Something. Do you want him back? No. She said it fast, then slower. No, I don't. That's not why I listened. Then why? She looked toward her house. Because his voice still knows where to go. That's the only way I can explain it. I heard him say my name, and suddenly I was standing in that old kitchen again, trying to figure out what mood he was in before I spoke. Her face stayed controlled, but her hands gave her away. He didn't even say much, she continued. Just that he hoped I was doing well. That he missed talking. That he'd been thinking about things. Normal words. But I listened like there was an instruction hidden in them. I wanted to tell her to delete it. I wanted to say his name did not deserve space in her phone, her pocket, her afternoon. The words came up fast. I did not say them. Instead, I said, thank you for telling me. She stared at me. That's it? She asked again, but this time her voice was different. That's it for now. You're not going to tell me what to do. No. What if I do the wrong thing? Then it's still yours to choose. Jane looked away, and for a second I thought she might cry. She didn't. She breathed through it, slow and uneven, then gave a small nod like she had just set down something heavy. Trevor always had advice, she said. For everything. My clothes, my tone, my work, my paintings, my friends. He called it caring. That isn't caring. No, she said. I know that now. Most days. Her shoulder brushed mine. Not by accident, I didn't think, but not quite on purpose either. Something in between. I don't know what I'm doing, she said. Me neither. That should worry me. Probably. She laughed under her breath, then let her shoulder rest against mine for Real. We sat there until the light started changing. No big promises. No dramatic declarations. Just her beside me, her phone silent in her lap, and me trying to understand that sometimes the strongest thing a person can offer is not an answer. It is room. After a while, Jane looked at me and said, "Easy kindness feels suspicious. I'll try to make mine awkward enough to trust." She smiled, tired but real. "That might work," she said. And for the first time since Jamie's truck had turned onto the street, I felt like maybe we had not been pushed backward. Maybe we had been pushed into the open. The next morning, Jane came over with pastries in a paper bag and no excuse at all. Jamie's truck was gone from her driveway. I had seen it leave 20 minutes earlier, heading toward the main road, probably for a run or coffee or whatever men like Jamie did when they needed to burn through suspicion. Jane knocked twice. When I opened the door, she lifted the bag. "I brought peace offerings." "For me or for my kitchen?" "For both. Your kitchen looks like it was decorated by a man who owns 1 pan and 3 regrets. I own 2 pans. That makes it worse." I stepped aside, and she came in like she had been there more than twice. Not careless, just a little more sure. She set the bag on the counter, found plates without asking, and watched me make coffee. It felt ordinary in a way that almost made me nervous. We sat at the kitchen table with cinnamon pastries between us. Morning light came through the blinds and cut across her hands. There was a thin line of blue paint near her wrist. "You've been painting," I said. She looked down like she had forgotten it was there. "Last night. Couldn't sleep." "Good painting or angry painting?" "Both." There was offense involved. "I'm afraid to ask." "You should be." She tore a piece from her pastry and smiled to herself. Then she said, "The first painting I ever sold was of a yellow house with a garden that didn't exist." I leaned back. "A fake garden?" "A better garden," she said. "The real yard was mostly weeds and a plastic flamingo with 1 leg. I painted what I thought it wanted to be." "That sounds like you." She looked at me. "How would you know?" "I've seen your yard." That got her. She laughed, warm and easy. And for a second there was no Trevor in the room, no Jamie waiting across the street, no old fears sitting under every word. Just Jane, barefoot in my kitchen, eating pastry with paint on her wrist. Then she nodded toward the notebooks on the side table. "What did you write?" "Short stories." "About what?" "People mostly. Quiet stuff. A guy waiting at a bus stop who keeps seeing the same woman every Friday. A kid who thinks his neighbor is a spy. A man who buys flowers for someone who never comes home." That last one sounds sad. It probably was. I was 26. I thought sadness made me deep. And now I write invoices. She made a face. "That's worse. Pays better." "Not the same thing." I looked at the notebooks. Dust on the top one. A pen tucked into the spiral, like it was still waiting for me to come back. "I stopped because I started hearing myself too much," I said. Every sentence sounded fake. Then I got busy, and busy became a good cover. After a while, not writing felt safer than finding out I had nothing left. Jane nodded slowly. "I know that trick. I figured you might." She took a breath and looked down at her coffee. "Trevor used to say I was too intense, too emotional, too much. Like I walked into rooms carrying extra weather." I hated how familiar those words sounded, even though I had never heard him say them. "You're not too much," I said. She looked up. "You're just not too little," I said. Some people don't know what to do with that because it asks them to show up as themselves. Jane went very still. I almost apologized because it sounded more polished than I meant it to. But her eyes changed before I could say anything. Not sad exactly. More like something in her had heard the sentence and quietly sat down with it. "That's the kind of thing I would have written on a sticky note 10 years ago," she said. "Please don't. My ego can't handle being fridge material." She smiled, but her eyes were wet. Then she reached across the table. This time there was no hesitation. Her hand found mine, fingers sliding between mine like she had already decided. "I want to try this," she said. "For real." My chest tightened. "So do I." But not hidden. No, not from Jamie. Not from the neighbors. Not from myself. She squeezed my hand. "I spent too long acting like my own life needed permission." "Then we don't ask for permission. We may receive commentary. From Jamie. From Jamie. From Mrs. Kennard. From the mailman if he gets invested. He seems professional. Don't trust him." We smiled, but the moment stayed serious underneath. "I'll tell Jamie," Jane said. "Myself. Before dinner." "Dinner?" She lifted one eyebrow. You're coming over tonight. I am. Yes. Because if I don't make this clear, Jamie will invent 12 versions in his head, and 11 of them will involve you being terrible. What's the 12th? You being only mildly questionable. I'll aim for that. By dinner, my stomach felt like I had swallowed a small engine. Jane's house smelled like roasted vegetables and lemon chicken. Jamie sat at the table across from me, arms folded, looking like he had agreed to eat but not to enjoy it. Jane did not let the tension run the room. Jamie, she said, setting down a bowl of potatoes, Andy and I are seeing where this goes. I'm telling you because I love you, not because you get a vote. Jamie looked at her for a long second. Then he looked at me. Convenient. Jane sighed. Try again. He picked up his fork, then put it down. I'm not trying to be a jerk. You're succeeding by accident? His mouth twitched, but he fought it. Then his face turned serious. You rebuilt yourself from scratch. I watched it. I'm not going to smile across the table at somebody who might chip away at that. I know, Jane said softly. Jamie's eyes came back to me. So, I set my fork down too. I'm not here to fix her, or save her, or own any part of her life. I want to stand beside her if she lets me. That's all. That's easy to say. I know. And if honesty gets inconvenient, then I still owe her honesty. Jamie stared at me. Jane stayed quiet. I could feel her beside me, not leaning on me, not needing me to fight for her, just letting the truth sit there. Finally, Jamie picked up his fork again. Potatoes are getting cold, he said. It was not approval. Not exactly. But he kept eating. After dinner, Jane and I washed dishes together while Jamie watched some game in the living room with the volume too low. She handed me a plate, and her shoulder brushed mine. I called Trevor before dinner, she said. I nearly dropped the plate. She saw my face and shook her head. I'm okay. What happened? I told him not to contact me again. She took the plate from me and set it in the rack. No long speech. No courtroom moment. I just said I didn't want his voice in my life anymore. I looked at her. Jane. And I deleted the voicemail. Something about the way she said it told me not to turn it into a victory for us. So I said, how do you feel? She thought about it. Shaky. Proud. A little sad, which annoys me. But clear. She looked at me. I didn't do it for you. I know. I needed you to know that. I do. On the porch later, the air was cool and still. Jamie had gone upstairs to the guest room after giving me one last look that said I remained under review. Jane stood beside me at the railing. So, she said. So, we're doing this. If you want. She turned toward me. I do. Then she kissed me. It was soft. Careful. Real. Not a movie kind of kiss. No rush. No big performance. Just her hand against my chest, my hand at her waist. Both of us learning the shape of something new without trying to own it too fast. When I walked home, my house looked different from the sidewalk. Same porch. Same windows. Same quiet rooms waiting inside. But it did not feel empty. Months passed, and things did not become perfect. They became lived in. Jane painted again. First in small bursts, then on weekends with music playing loud enough for me to hear through the open windows. I started writing again, badly at first, then less badly. Jamie came for Christmas and still watched me like I might steal silverware. But later, when Jane was outside bringing in firewood, he said, she seems like herself again. I said, she always was. He looked at me for a moment, then nodded once. That was Jamie's version of a parade. One of Jane's paintings hangs in my living room now. A yellow house with a garden that looks like it finally got what it needed. Sometimes Jane stands under it and says she still cannot believe I opened the door that day. I always tell her the same thing. You were holding dinner. I'm not an idiot. She laughs every time. But the truth is, I know what she means. One ordinary knock changed the way my house felt. It changed the way her light crossed my yard in the evenings. It changed the notebooks on my table and the paint on her hands. She thanked me for opening the door. I never knew how to explain that she had opened one too.